Yeah, we'll have a look at that second semi-final. Probably a very different game, actually, in terms of style and in terms of scoreline, I guess you could say. With South Africa taking it late, 16-15 was the final score. Mate, Joy, I'm not sure if you caught any of that one, but what did you make of that second semi-final?
Mate, I most definitely did. And boy, was it a semi-final to remember.
Mm.
Unless you, of course, support England. Um, then it would have been a heartbreaking ending for you. 16-15 defeat for the English. But look, it was a truly epic semi-final, I thought, and it came down to the very wire. Right, England were in control for 73 minutes of the game, I believe, and South Africa's bench ended up being all the difference in the end. Right, so definitely an exciting match to watch as a forward, as someone who likes to see forwards score tries. And in saying that, it was nice to see even RG Snyman, when he came on, he gave South Africa a huge boost, not only in the scrum, but he was where they were able to put England under some immense pressure and force them to do silly things in the scrum, like putting their knee down due to the amount of pressure that they had. And I think, Keith, as much as I don't like the guy as a ref, sure he's a good guy off the field, but as a ref, not his biggest fan. I think he made the right call in those moments where he penalised, the scrum, the English scrum. Those props that came on for England, unfortunately, they were exposed and found out in terms of not their ability, but I think they may have been caught off guard, or they may have underestimated the bomb squad props that came on. So it was nice to see that kind of between two powerhouse scrums. It was nice to see that kind of thing happening where the scrum just collapsed because there was just too much from one side and not so much from the other. And then you have cometh the hour, Andre Pollard. He was ice cool under pressure as well, slotting that winning penalty from 50 meters out. And it was quite a remarkable performance from him, being brought on early. Unfortunately for the other bloke who started the match, the coaches must have seen something and gone, let's get him on early in the first half. So that was a risk that they took, and obviously it paid off in the end. I think the English scrum, being as vulnerable as it was, and conceding a number of scrum penalties in the second half especially, I thought, that's something that they're going to have to go back and this week, obviously they're going to have to pick themselves up. I'm sure no one wants to be playing for third and fourth match, but they're going to have to fix that immediately and see what they can do against another scrummaging powerhouse, Argentina, traditionally. Right? They're known for their scrum. And, they're bulky forwards who know how to get the rolling balls on and love that forward play. So it was just nice to see Pollard have accuracy with his boot. And he seems to be comfortable as the 10, whether he's coming off the bench or whether he's starting. He seems to be comfortable in that position. And I do remember seeing him when in Auckland, and I think it was 2015 or 16 when they had an under-20s World Cup here in New Zealand, and South Africa, I think, took it out. But they were staying at a hotel next to where I worked in Auckland, and I saw all those boys. And a lot of them are playing in this World Cup. So it's nice to see them go on to higher honours and do well. What does this mean for the Rugby World Cup final? I guess it just means, we're going to have a rematch of the the 2019 game, 2, the game earlier this year between South Africa and New Zealand, and 3, and more importantly, the 95 match where we played them in the final of the World Cup, and obviously we didn't get on we didn't get on the preferred side of that win-loss board. So it'll be nice to get this one up and be the first to get the fourth. However, I think my consolation would be if Will Jordan gets the 9th try, gets to be the first person to score 9 tries. Yeah. Looking forward to it.
Yep, nice thoughts there. 100% agree with the bench. That South African bench, the bomb squad. Shucks, they made a massive difference. And he talked about Pollard, because, Rusty Erasmus, the coach, he's renowned as this great coach. But Shucks, he showed a little bit of ruthlessness. He yanked LeBoc after 30-odd minutes, and he just puts Pollard out there. Now, I love Pollard, and he's a gun. But I thought they were getting beaten in the forwards in that early first half anyway. And you talked about that before, because England were on top for long periods of that game. So that sort of stifled a lot of LeBoc's play. So I was a bit shocked, because I didn't think he was the reason they were behind. So I was surprised he got yanked early, even though Pollard was a difference maker when he came on. So obviously, Rassi knows what he's doing, and he'll might have questioned him. But definitely some impact from the bench. And that was the difference between the two sides, I thought. So, Roger, mate, have you got any thoughts? Did you catch that second semi?
Yeah, I felt that I was really excited for this game and see how both teams would fare. But it seemed like England had the measure on South Africa, and there was a couple of errors from South Africa's lineouts, and they couldn't seem to get a flow in the early stages of that game, especially when they were giving penalties away. Their lineouts went through. Manambi would throw the odd crooked throw. At the same time, Jamie George had some difficulty as well, and he had a few miscued throws, in that first half. But for the majority of the beginning of the first half, England were dominating in terms of possession, and South Africa was struggling to get a flow on. And a couple of moments here where, especially with Owen Farrell sort of being able to just slot his kicks in 4 from 4 in the first half. So they had that 12-point buffer. But like you guys have talked about, LeBoc getting pulled, I think it was the 31st or 32nd minute, and the Andre Pollard, not long after he's on, makes that penalty kick to keep them in close vicinity with the lead. So, but I think it was the rain, and I don't know if the rain is going to make a difference to this weekend's game, to the final, but I couldn't really see the rain from a spectator's point of view, watching it in the lounge, but it was hard to see. But that's what they kept on saying. And then it was evident there were a couple of passes that some of the players were trying to make, and the trajectory wasn't right, and the ball was just slipping out before they even were meaning to let go of the ball. So it sort of played into England's hand. And you mentioned, Joey, the props, and Joey, Marla and Cole, who are a lot more senior than the younger, fresh faces of Genge and Sinclair. And, there's a lot. These guys are the young youthful props, and apparently they're the future of England rugby. But it just didn't seem to, when they came on, their impact was far from anything that a fraction of what the bomb squad from South Africa had. When they all came on, man, it's just nothing changes. They just carry on from where the boys were getting off. But I think it's the timing of it, the injection of Pollard, and then that timing of when, they're still behind, but the trust in the bench to add something. You got Quagga Smith coming on, and he, nothing different to the previous week as well against France.
Mm.
And the impact that they have, Faf de Klerk getting in the face, just taking on anyone and everyone. There was a time where Faf de Klerk even tried to take out Joe Mala. It's like big unit, and Mala just flicks him off. But that's the kind of disruption that a guy like Faf de Klerk, that's his job, just to try and disrupt as much as possible, even though he's going to come off second best against a man mountain like Mala. But it's the distraction, letting them not focus on their job, making it easy, and then causing errors. And unfortunately, and just seeing that game turn, and that Andre Pollard was massive on that too. Tom Curry having to come off a blood bin. Vunipola comes on. And unfortunately, my son, being the critic that he is, said, man, that guy doesn't look like a number 8. And that's just based on his physique. But I think, and then even the commentators mentioned that, Vunipola isn't quite the same player as to what he may have been like a few years ago. And then even Manu Tuilangi, how much he was trying his best. He was trying to inject himself to try and penetrate that defence line, but it seemed like they had him wrapped up each time. And every time they tried to string some passes together, South Africa started to get a flow on, and that's when they started to score some points in that second half. Again, in the early parts of that second half, Jamie George's throw, their line-out started to suffer, and then South Africa, although still on the pump, under the pump, but their scrummage was keeping them in the game. And then, like I mentioned, the injection of everyone, such as Faf de Klerk. Again, I don't understand the timings of those, but again, Erasmus, and his strategies, because Faf de Klerk comes on 6 minutes after half time. How much you got? 5-6 minutes to the starting halfback. Cobus Reinach, I think.
Cobus Reinach, yeah.
Yeah. So he's an awesome, exciting player too. But then, when he comes off, Faf de Klerk takes it to another level, eh? And we've seen Faf de Klerk start in the past. We're going to see him start this week. He's been named to start. And unfortunately, it's a 1-back, it's a 7-1 split. So, and Cobus Reinach's not there. So you got Willie LaRue as the back. So we haven't seen Faf de Klerk. When was the last game that Faf de Klerk started in this World Cup? Probably in the earlier pool matches. But he's been coming off the bench for these. But maybe it was strategy to save him then. He's got time because he's only played 10, 30 minutes respectively for the last 2 games. And so, he's half an hour for the last game and about 25 minutes for the first quarterfinal. But, nothing was lost when Mbanambi came off as well. And Quagga Smith, I think he's got to be super sub of the tournament, the way he comes on and does awesome for his team, despite the fact that Khaleesi comes off. Etherbet had an awesome match as well. But the scrum, seeing that the change and the difference that those guys made to the scrum, and it could be a fatigue thing for England, but it could be that those guys just didn't adjust, and that knee to the ground. As much as we dislike scrum resets, but that was the difference. Genja's knee. Not many people saw it because the cameras were on Sinclair's side, and it was there's been photographs and replays. It being Genja's and O'Keefe. Keith was right there. Ben O'Keefe was right there. So as soon as, and it was just for a moment, we saw a lot of scrummage penalties taking place earlier in the tournament. The All Blacks were getting pinged for it too. Ethan de Groot, his knees went down a couple of times. We were getting penalised, and there were other teams. And it wasn't just reserved for the minnows, the lesser teams, but even the top teams, the All Blacks, South Africa and England, getting pinged here as well. So if they're going to be consistent, they've got to reward it. And then again, who steps up to the mark? Pollard. And then that started that. Even 10 minutes ago, they were still behind, but those scrummaging penalties, Genj and Sinclair just couldn't. And they came on around the 20th minute mark, and they just couldn't compete. And you'd think it'd be different because the more senior props started. But could they have done it differently? Would Steve Borthwick have done it differently, where he started those younger boys and then bring on Marla and Cole towards the end, as we've seen them do in the past? But yeah, he went through a different strategy there. And unfortunately, for me, basically, I thought that England had a boring style. Although it kept them in front of the game, their style of game is just boring. They're scoring penalties. They don't have, against lesser teams, they can get the tries that they sort of try and build themselves up to be try-scoring teams. However, when it comes to the crunch, these real close games, they depend on their kicks, they depend on those penalties, and that's where Owen Farrell was ideal to be there. But at the same time, they couldn't smother the attack that was coming on late in the piece from the South Africans, and that's where the Boks were back, especially with that Snyman try, awesome try, which they deserved, and it was that little spin at the end that got him over the line. He was pretty much, they had him, but just that little spin made the difference, and he was able to get it down. And then South Africa were in the hunt, a couple of points down, and then penalty with that scrum penalty that I mentioned earlier on.
Yep, nice thoughts there, Rog. It's always good to have yourself and Joey on here, because I've been watching rugby for way over 30 years, and I see scrums and I could not tell you what's going on. So it's always good to have, members of the front row club who know, who enjoy watching the scrums and can explain it to, average Joes like myself.
But at the time when they had that, because they had a reset, and then the penalty came after the reset, I didn't see it initially. I wasn't sure what the penalty was given for, but when I re-watched the highlights, straight away Ben O'Keefe goes down. He actually motions it. His hand goes up, blows the whistle, and he motions down with his knee touching the ground. But I didn't see it myself until later, and I was thinking, well, what a cruel way to sort of lose that lead. A few minutes, they had been leading that whole 77 minutes, and then that's when that penalty was awarded, and then Pollard, as for a couple of minutes, and then it was an awesome strike as well from Pollard, but it done the job, and that's the kind of medal that you need in tight games like this. I do feel sorry for England. Their style of play, got them that far. Even a lot of their punters, a lot of their supporters said that they super exceeded expectation, because even they admit that it's a boring style, but it's a style that wins their matches. They're not going to have the strike power or the flair like the All Blacks, the French, the Irish, or even and the Springboks and Australia at the best of times. But what they can do, they can kick penalties. They've got the personnel to do that from long range, from close range, from the sides as well. So that's where they're dangerous. But at the same time, they can hold their own and score tries at will against lesser teams. Tight games like this, their kicking game, even the drop goal from, Owen Farrell as well, just to sort of, and that's when they started to get excited, thinking that, man, they're on their way to taking this out. Hey, that Owen Farrell, I was thinking, oh no, it's like, memories of Johnny Wilkinson doing it against Australia in 2003, but it was just, thinking, but at the same time, it brought me back to the NRL final where the Panthers were down. 20-odd minutes. It's like, nah, South Africa, you can't count them out. And sure enough, Bomb Squad, as you mentioned, made the difference. And now we're going to be rubbing our hands for an All Blacks Springboks final.
Yep. I think you've both touched on that same point about the Bomb Squad. So that's 2 weeks in a row where the game's been on the line, and the Bomb Squad's come on and just got them over the line. And you talked about those props. So that's the good thing about the Bomb Squad. They got the bench guys are just as good as the starters. Whereas when you look at that England side, it was Sinclair and that other dude who came on. They're not quite at that same level, and that's where they got exposed. And I felt for Sinclair because he was the guy who got carved up 2019 final.
Yes.
And he must be having nightmares about those Springboks.
Yeah, and he didn't want to accept a silver medal. Didn't want to put a silver medal on.
Well, I felt you don't want to be like one guy. You don't want to be like, one guy single-handedly lost it, but he got. I've never seen a prop kid so badly smoked then in that 2019 final. So, good thoughts there, boys.